Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, live viewer question and answer. I'm going to sit here at this desk and attempt to answer every single question that comes in. Now, if there's too many, we might physically run out of time before the Masters starts. And look, I got other stuff I got to go do. I got to go fill out lineups for the DraftKings Millionaire Maker, and go get your entry right now. In case, it doesn't look like there's going to be any overlay. It looks like it might fill pretty quickly. So if you're not in yet, you might want to go get those spots. If you're watching this on demand, just skip forward just a tad and we'll get into the live questions right away. I do want to let everyone know that you can get the stats, trends, rankings, and Millionaire Maker info for the year's first major if you go to shopdraftkings.com in the DraftKings store, and you'll find it in the description of this video. It's a great PDF that gives you a ton of information. I'd recommend everyone go do that now. And hey, there's like 7 hours of Masters content I've put out over the past week that you can go do. I think the most important one, strangely enough, is going to be the Millionaire Maker Ownership Projection Show. And I know we'll get into this in the live chat, but you need to leverage ownership. You need to know where the chalk is going to lie to make sure that you don't have duplicate lineups in the Millionaire Maker. Jeff Bergerson and Colin Drew did that with me yesterday. If you go to dkplaybook.com, you can find my full article, my DraftKings cheat sheet, and if you go to facebook.com/thepme, you can find my picks cheat sheet up there as well. And I do want to let everyone know there's still time. If you're in a crunch for a Masters pool, or you're making a wager, or you're just building a whole bunch of lineups on DraftKings this week, use fantasynational.com, $7 for the week, and it will cut down on all the time you're going to spend doing your Masters research. The most customizable and efficient way to get your lineups in. So please go check that out. Give the episode a like, always goes a long way. But let's get into this, all right? Let's talk some Masters. Let's do it.
Entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, live Masters. Hello, friends. Viewer question and answers, but it's not just going to be me today. And please do not ask me about how Bryson DeChambeau did in the stupid par 3 tournament. I don't care. Reid Fowler is joining me, though, of DK Live. What's going on, Reid?
Nothing much. Your boy Dylan Fratelli had a hole-in-one, too, so...
Can't play him now. Yeah, he's probably going to win. Can't play him. Fleetwood won. Now just take him off your rosters. So if you do well or poorly, you can't play any of these people. So it's just them's the breaks. Best not play at all, then. Why even play? Can't play anyone. Anyway, load up your questions. It's going to be tough on Periscope because the questions just instantly go away. So YouTube is probably your best bet if you want me to eventually get to them, because you might put them on. I might not be looking at Periscope. I might be looking at the camera. Won't be able to see it, but I'll try my best to answer every single question that you have. But just please don't make them stupid. Just pray for me. There's over like 7 hours of Masters coverage I've done already. I have cheat sheets up on my Facebook page and dkplaybook.com. You can find a lot of information in there. And if you respond seriously to some of those player capsules I have done with the jokes in them, reassess your life, figure it out. Anyway, Reid, let's get into this, and we'll start with the very first question from Michael. He says, full fade on Rose, smart or idiotic? Now, I know a lot of people going full fade on Rose. These are not idiotic people. These are people that win a lot of money playing on DraftKings. So I think that you either want to take one of two options. You either want to go on an overweight position. So if I have Justin Rose projected to be around 31%, although there's enough fade people out there now that are playing like 150 lineups, so that number might come down just a little bit, but I personally have 35% of Justin Rose. I'm slightly above the average, but I don't think it makes any sense whatsoever to say, let's say you play 10 lineups and you have Justin Rose on 1. Like, either don't play him or play him on 4. You either have to be heavily invested or not invested at all. I think that's the stance you want to make, and that's up to you. That is up to the people out there that, listen, if you think that Justin Rose is going to win, have him in every lineup. If you think anyone is for sure going to win, you have to have them in your lineup. But if you want to do the game theory play, and personally, I'm not playing any Paul Casey for a lot of the same reasons that people aren't playing Justin Rose. I'm also not using Bubba Watson in my Millionaire Maker core. And this changes based on the different type of DraftKings tournament that you are in. Now, in the Millionaire Maker, I think it actually makes sense. You can box out a lot of the field. If Justin Rose comes T17, and you don't have him, that's a big win for you. What do you think, Reid?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think when you look at a guy like Justin Rose, I mean, he checks off all the boxes that you want here. His current form coming into it is stellar. His past experience here is stellar as well. And if you look over the last 10 years, Justin Rose is getting the most eagles and the most birdies out of anyone in the field. So when you add that all up together, what are you trying to accomplish if you full fade the guy? And you mentioned this before. If you think he's going to win, the ownership doesn't matter, right? Because that's probably the only narrative where you would want to fade Justin Rose, is that he's going to be so heavily owned. He was in a playoff last year with Sergio, so maybe the casual guys know who Justin Rose is. But still, I mean, this guy is coming into this tournament way too hot. Like you said, you either want to be overweight on him, and you don't want to full fade a guy who's playing this well.
Okay, so Rob from Periscope asked, what do we do with Ricky Fowler? Affordable star, but will he show up? If I had more faith in Ricky, I think that he is the ultimate contrarian play this week because no one wants to play him. It's because when you look at how he's performed, he's been like around in a lot of these tournaments, and then he just goes, ooh, and goes away. It reminds me a lot of Phil from years past where, I mean, not so much Phil this year, but the past 2 years where he's making an insane amount of birdies. But the bogey avoidance, while still looking pretty good, bogey avoidance doesn't factor in how many doubles and triples you're making. And these big numbers from Ricky are just terrifying. He did play in the second to last group last year. A few years ago, he was top 5 at the Masters. He finished top 5 in all 4 majors. It was insane. So in terms of Ricky Fowler, and even Rory McIlroy really plays into the same kind of thing too, where they can just make the big numbers. Both of them can shoot 62 when you look at one round, and the next round they're 77. Like, it's not something that I personally want to be involved with. So in the Millionaire Maker, I really condensed my core up at the top. I made a lot of stands, and one of my stands was no Ricky Fowler. What do you think?
Yeah, same here. I think when you look at a guy like Ricky and you saw his performance at Houston, it kind of scared you. I mean, he was missing putts. And again, putting is not the only thing that you want to look at here at the Masters. We've seen Jordan Spieth come into this not putting well and really finding his way around Augusta greens. But a guy like Ricky, what you're scared about is, A, he's not making those putts that he usually does, and he's made some swing changes, and you heard it in some of his post-game or post-round interviews, where some of the shots that he usually takes, especially here at Augusta, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear someone saying, hey, my bailout shot, let's see, it's a distance and a left to right fade, is not necessarily working well. I'm trying to hold it up. You don't want to hear that, because when you miss the greens here, if your short game is not stellar, and your putting is not stellar, and missing it in the right places, all the past winners here say, hey, you got to hit it in the right places, and you also have to have a plan B. It's not necessarily how far you hit it, although that is a statistic that we're looking at. It's where you stop the ball on the greens. And if Ricky can't dial in, and we haven't really seen that, and missing these putts, I think you hit the nail on the head that a guy like Ricky is a good contrarian because he's an elite player. We've seen his finishes in the Masters, so he could pop. But I'm not on Ricky as well.
Okay, so let's go to the YouTube chat, and this comes from Rubio Dime. Should I worry about Bryson or the par 3? If anyone is monitoring this, can you please block him so he can never comment again? Give your head a shake. Let's see. Here's a better Bryson question, because this one from Ben is super accurate. With Bryson, Steele, and Chappell looking super chalky, thoughts on Ross Fisher? Bomber, decent form, previous experience, yay or nay? He really hasn't played all that well since sustaining this injury, this mysterious back injury he had at WGC Mexico. So I don't love the form at all, but I think the overall idea of Bryson, of Chappell, and of Steele, and I'll throw Pat Perez into that mix, Adam Hadwin too, they're all going to be super chalky. They're all guys that I like, actually, that if they get to a certain threshold, you probably don't want to play them. Now, I'm personally just pushing on Bryson. I don't care that he shot +5 in the par 3 tournament. You know that people let their kids take shots in this tournament, and some of the people just dunk it in the water just for kicks? So I wouldn't worry too much about that. So you either need to have a strongly overweight stance on these guys or just don't play them. So if we're going to, Ross Fisher's not personally for me, but if you do look in that range, Reed, who are some of the names that are popping up to you? Because I've been looking at ball striking. I prefer distance over shorter guys, but I do like Kyle Stanley a little bit. He's equally as cheap. Gary Woodland is down there. You can talk me into Kevin Kisner a little bit, although he was +9 in the par 3. I mean, he's probably going to shoot 80 over at the Masters. So who are the guys down in that range that you're looking at that are potential pivots off these chalkier, cheaper plays?
Yeah, Steele and Chappell, they're coming in good form. We haven't really heard anything with the back with Chappell, so I'm not too worried about that. But Gary Woodland is a guy that you mentioned that I'm looking at here. He's got massive performances. Now, he missed the cut a couple of times last year, too, and we kind of figured out when he won this past year that he was going through some personal things. And so we don't know what really was the case on that missed cut. Was it coming into it. He wasn't playing that well. We know that this guy can hit the ball far, and that's, again, a metric that we're looking at in terms of driving distance. He is not going to be, I don't think he's going to be as heavily owned in this range because of the guys that you mentioned. So I really like Gary Woodland. He's coming in, birdies are better at 9th, and that's what you need to do, right? Especially on par 5s. This guy, par 5 scoring is top 20 over the last 24. So I'm looking at Gary Woodland to really make those pivots off of Chappell, off of a guy like Bryson. But again, a guy like Bryson, heavily owned, if you think he has a chance to win, he thinks obviously he has a chance to win. I wouldn't necessarily fade a guy like Bryson because of the form that he's coming in. If you want to, a guy that I like is Gary Woodland.
Yeah, so someone in the Periscope chat mentioned Xander. I actually like Xander a lot as well, but he's a bit pricier. I mean, we're talking about pivoting off a $6,900 player onto a 72. Yeah. That's very doable when you construct your lineups, especially if you left a lot of money on the table, or even just $400. You can do that. With Xander, then you're reconstructing your entire lineup, so it's not really an equal pivot play. I mean, I think that Xander is an excellent pivot off of like Kuchar or Stenson, or even Patrick Cantlay for that matter. I think that Tony Finau falls into that same line too. So the next question is, fade Bubba since no one has ever won the Masters when they missed the cut the year before. That comes from Kyle on YouTube. Listen, these Masters trends are all trends until they get broken. I like to bring them up because they're fun to make into a graphic and put up, and they're a great narrative to talk about, but I don't think that actually has any correlation. Bubba was awful last year. He used a different ball, and it clearly affected how he played overall. He dropped almost 100 spots in the world rankings. All of a sudden, he switches back to a new ball, and boom, Bubba's won 2 of the past 4 tournaments, and he's one of the favorites here. I think the logical thing that if you do want to fade Bubba, which I am doing in the Millionaire Maker, is that you know he's going to be like 25% owned, and his short game has not been up to snuff for where you would want to see it here. So if he starts missing greens in regulation, you pray that he doesn't, and you pray that no one does, but no one hits every gur. So if he has to start chipping, it's not at the same level as it was when he won his previous 2 green jackets. And that's the part that would concern me a little bit. When you get to these top-end guys, you can't just own everyone. You have to really pick and choose. If there's something little that you don't like, maybe, listen, if you want to take Bubba, take Bubba. He is one of the favorites to win this. I have a bet on Bubba to win from February. I just don't like where he's at in terms of the Millionaire Maker on DraftKings. So that'd be it for me. Would you fade Bubba because he missed the cut here last year? Or would you fade any first-timer because they've never won?
Yeah, I would fade a first-timer because they've never won. But the reason I'd be fading Bubba is not because of a statistic where we always talk about this, right? You can analysis paralysis where you go into this and you say, because of X, Y, and Z, we're not taking Tiger. Or we're not taking Jordan Spieth, right? A guy like Bubba is coming into this, and you saw when he has won, he's come into very, very similar form. So if that narrative is stronger where you think, okay, no one has won the Masters because they missed a cut last year, a guy like Bubba is playing at an elite level. So I wouldn't be fading Bubba because of that stat. I'd be fading Bubba because of his ownership in that range. And there's some guys in that range that I like a Noren, for instance, in that 8K range, where, yeah, we can see that ball striking and that current form is coming in hot, and he's not going to garner the same ownership as a Watson, even a Garcia. So, someone like a Noren who's now $600 cheaper, that gives you more leverage up top, where I do like those guys as well in that 9K range. So I wouldn't be fading Bubba based off of the missed cut. I'd be fading Bubba because of ownership. And if you think Bubba is going to win, again, we talked about that earlier. If you think Bubba's going to win, it doesn't matter how much ownership that he has. You want the winner in the Million Maker.
Jacob from YouTube asks, why no love for Rafa Cabrera Bello? Watched every video this week. Thanks a lot, Jacob. Appreciate it. Hope you gave it a like, too. And this week, and he barely got mentioned. Yeah, I'm just not really ever a Rafa guy. I always prefer him in the Euro-style tournaments rather than, like, the Masters. And I think that the lack of distance is going to end up becoming problematic. He's not been, he's been okay with his irons. When you look at Rafa Cabrera Bello in strokes gained approach, he's 15th over the past 24 rounds. But he got hot with a putter, and that's why he did so well in Mexico. And that was the first good putting performance that he's had in a while. He's not great off the tee. He's not the type of player that I want to go to. I will say that if people are feeling Rafa, he makes an excellent pivot, because I actually agree with Jacob that no one is really talking up Rafa Cabrera Bello right now, except for Feinberg, just because he loves Rafa so much. But I think I would wait on him and maybe look at him more for the Open Championship, or maybe even the Irish Open the week before. Those sorts of things. So not the Irish Open, the Scottish Open. The Irish Open slightly before that, my mistake. But that would be my take on Rafa. Again, you can't own everyone. He's just out for me. You?
Yeah, me too as well. I mean, if you look at his past finishes, he missed the cut, and then I think 2016 he had a 17th. So he's played well here before, but guys in that range, one guy that you really like, a fellow Canadian, Adam Hadwin. I mean, you know, if you feel like a guy like Rafa is potentially not coming into form, and I'm in that same camp where I'm just fading Rafa, I'm looking at guys in that range that really have win equity at this course specifically. So a guy like Rafa is not going to be someone that I'm garnering a lot of ownership. You know, I'm looking at Webb Simpson too for some ownership in terms of like a 5-10%. But, you know, for me, I'm going to be off on Rafa and go elsewhere. Because even down there, Kisner at 72 and Gary Woodland, again, I want to play those guys a little bit more than Rafa. He just didn't pop in my stat model.
Yeah, you can't play Kisner, though. He did very poorly in the par 3, so just cross him right off. Jeff asked, and I really like this question. It's probably my favorite question I've had of the week so far. So Jeff asked, instead of talking about which players to play, thank you, Jeff, what are your thoughts on Mike Miller's tweet about how par 4 scoring is actually the most important stat to look at this week? I love Mike Miller, and his sheets are something that I use every single week. So go follow at Smart Golf Bets, I think that's what the Twitter handle is. Mike's legit. And he's right that par 4 scoring is going to be incredibly important. The problem with par 4 scoring, as along with par 3 scoring, is that it's highly unpredictable. It's one of those things that you retroactively go back and look at and say, oh, he played really well on the par 4s, he won. It's like using WAR in baseball. WAR is not a predictive metric, but it does tell you who the best was. And par 4 scoring is along those same lines. Yes, I think factoring in par 4 scoring overall a little bit is smart, but par 5 scoring tends to be more predictable. It's why we always put more emphasis on things like driving distance and even approach shots over a shorter term, or ball striking rather than putting. Because one thing tends to remain consistent week to week, where the other one can just go whoop, 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 and you're looking at a sinus curve of results. And par 4 scoring can go a little bit the same way. And par 4 scoring a lot of the time mixes in, hey, if a guy is hitting really well with his approaches, then he's probably going to score really well on par 4s because he's dialing it in. Is the guy, or if he's not playing all that well with approaches, he's leaving everything to 20 feet. If he has a really hot putting week, then he's going to play really well on par 4s. So that's the reason why I haven't been factoring it in. I agree with Mike that the guys that tread water on the par 4s or even gain a stroke and they finish -1 for the week on the par 4s are the guys that are going to be there at the end. But if they're not piling up the birdies and eagles on the par 5s, and especially for DraftKings scoring because of those eagle bonuses, then that's what I'm looking at more. So that's where my take would be on it. There's another Rafa Cabrera Mayo question. Jeffrey asked from YouTube, how many players should I have in my core? Struggling to narrow down my player pool down. Is there a big difference between 20 lineups and 50 lineups? Yes, I think that there is a big difference between 20 lineups and 50 lineups. In fact, it's over 1.5. It is 1.5 times. So it's just 4 or 2.5 times. Remember that. So you can expand your tertiary players. It means that instead of I played 20 lineups. So I have at least every player that I've taken in at least 3 lineups. Those are my tertiary players. Most of the players I have in I have a few people in half. I have a few people in 35%. I have a few people at 25%, and those people down at 15%. And that's how I have to build my levels. When you start talking about playing 50 as opposed to 20, you can expand a little bit. So when we talk about some of the chalkier guys at the bottom, like the Chappells, like the Brysons, all those guys, I didn't have the luxury of just kind of spreading it around a little bit, and even at the top end. And instead of going big on Spieth or big on John Rahm, that kind of thing, I could add in some Rory if I wanted to have him. I could add in some Justin Thomas if I wanted to have him. You can't do that with this smaller number. There is no steadfast rule with how you should build your core. It's all about your risk tolerance. But you have to remember that if you do push all in on 1 or 2 players in a concentrated core, even if you're playing 5 lineups or 6 lineups or 20 lineups, that if your guys hit, you want to win, and if your guys lose, you're going to lose everything. And you need to be able to, you need to be prepared to do that, especially in the Millionaire Maker. If not, go play some cash games and lower your stakes a little bit for something that's not less volatile. So it really depends on your risk tolerance. If you become one of these people that just spreads all the picks around and you really expand your core, essentially you're just paying the rake. So what do you think? How would you build your core, Reid?
Yeah, you're going to break even, right? If you're playing 50 lineups and you just go all willy-nilly and you spread everyone around, you're really just going to be at even. So I'm in the same camp as you. In terms of core players, right, we really look at the way I do it is I go to every price range and I say, okay, who are the guys that, I'm really going to come in on? If it's Adam Hadwin at 72 in that low 7, Charlie Hoffman, for instance, the guys at the top, Justin Thomas, Hideki, whoever you have a good stance on, you want to get exposure into those guys, into the majority of your lineup. So the difference between 20 and 50 obviously gives you more in terms of that. So yes, there is a difference between constructing lineups at 20 and 50, but in terms of core players, right, there's no steadfast rule in terms of how many that you have to have in there. Because like you said, if you want to go all in, and we saw it with some guys, Sergio, right, a guy that you had in the Millie Maker show, he went all in, right, with Sergio, and he hit. And so he did really well. The fact of the matter is there is no steadfast rule, but what you do want to do is if you have core players, let's say, 3 or 4 that you really like, yeah, you can make some lineups where you can have some ownership where you have these guys at, 30%, if the trends are coming in where the chalk is 30%, have him in 35, 40% of your lineups, because if he does well, you're going to be in the money.
Okay, so let's go to Twitter and see if we can get one. Jim asked from Twitter, Rom, I think he means Ram, or John Rahm, but spelled the proper way, and Paul Casey or Rahm and Casey or Hatton and Spieth. I would go with Spieth because I think that Spieth is going to win, so I would want him in. But I have a lot of John Rahm. I have like 35% John Rahm. I just think he's being, like Ricky Fowler, he and Fowler are the two in that range that just won't be used in the $9,000 area. And I have more faith in Rahm, and I think that he'll actually be lower owned than Ricky as well. He does everything that you would want, and he's an excellent putter as well, and he makes the most birdies, basically, of anyone, and he can score on these par 5s. It's just he hasn't been playing all that great the past few times that we've seen him. That doesn't really concern me. I know that he's an elite player, and if you want to make the same case for Ricky, I understand that, but for me, I like Rahm more, and the way that I've constructed some of my lineups is that I did use Spieth the most from the top. I didn't use any Thomas or Tiger, and I used some Dustin because people seem to be off Dustin as well. So I've done a lot of the stacks of starting my teams with Dustin and then Rahm. It leaves you a bit shaky down at the bottom, but you can fill in your teams with pretty quality players to begin with, or down at that level anyway, but sticking with the similar skill sets. I know if Dustin plays well, and I know that Rahm plays well, there's a good chance that let's say Tony Finau plays well too. Guys with distance, guys that score, guys that have similar skill sets. I couldn't pull the trigger on Johnny Vegas, but Johnny Vegas is usually the other guy in that situation that follows along their coattails. So what do you make? Would you go with the Spieth Hatton? Hatton I am using a little bit of too, or would you go with the Rahm and Casey?
Yeah, I'm in the Rahm and Casey camp. I think Rahm is coming in, like you said, under the radar. You look at all those guys that are around his salary. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is Rahm another guy that people just don't like? Do you see that a lot? That his attitude sort of on the greens, or just in general when he's not playing well, he's a guy that's just not liked by the public. Is that what you see?
For Hatton or Rahm?
Well, both actually, but Rahm.
Yeah, people don't dislike Rahm because of it. They seem to have a visceral reaction to Tyrrell Hatton.
Yeah.
I think that's actually going to kill his ownership a little bit. Like, if you're looking to get away from Stenson and Kuchar in that range, go to Hatton and Xander. That's the move. Yeah,
but a guy like Rahm, like you said, he's coming in such great form. He's got the putter going. He can hit it a mile. What I really like with Rahm too is I like the high ball flights of some of these guys, right? So again, like I said earlier, I don't think it's where you need to hit it in terms of as far as opposed to where you need to stop the ball on the greens. And a guy like Rahm hits the ball a mile high and a mile long. So I like the Rahm Casey. And in terms of that stack, you'd like to stack certain guys that have similar skill sets, right? Like we always say, Jason Day course is a Chapel course. And so in a Rahm Casey stack, I can see in terms of where you're constructing a lot of your lineups, that's where your price ranges are coming. But I wouldn't necessarily stack those two on similar skill sets. But based off of what we were talking about earlier, you might get that ownership relief with Rahm when you're getting quite a high one on Casey. So I'm in the Rahm and Casey camp.
Okay, Webb or Hadwin? I would go Hadwin. You?
Yeah, I'm going Hadwin. But Webb does. I mean, like I said, Webb is an interesting.
Okay, you can't say you like every player. Just say no.
No.
Okay. Casey was grabbing his lower right side during range time on the Masters live video feed today. Is this something, or are we just overthinking it? You can overthink everything to this point. If you're committed to Paul Casey, you're committed. I'm out on Paul Casey. I like to hear this, to be perfectly honest with you. If I was in on Casey, it wouldn't sway me. Would it sway you?
No. I mean, again, don't read it. You could have, what was he scratching his back? I mean, come on, guys. Don't read into it too much. He's not doing, although, I don't know if you saw this too. On Monday, we saw Jason Day changing up his irons. What do you think about that?
I mean, he's been piss poor with his iron so far this season, and he's already won. A change can't hurt. I remember this was with Charles 2 years ago at the Open. It's like, oh, can't play Charles. He's changing clubs, and he was like T7. Like, don't worry about it.
Exactly.
These guys are professionals. I'm sure it's not the first time he's ever picked up this style of iron. I think he tested some out before he started putting them in his bag. Next question. Who will be the best debutant? This is from Kyle. I think it's going to be Xander Schauffele. Who do you think?
I'm looking at Tony Finau. I think he's coming in really nice just because of his distance. And his around the green play is actually really stands out to me as well. Again, he's a putter. He's a guy that is not coming in putting well at all. But again, a place at Augusta, we've seen it with Spieth. We've seen it with some of these guys like Willett. You don't have to be the best putter. And so I really like Tony Finau and some of the debutants.
Ross Watson asks, where do you think the dead zone as far as pricing is concerned on DK? I actually just think it's the entire $7,000 area. No one's really going. There's selected guys that everyone's going towards, and then you have everyone else. So even like think about in the low ones. So everyone's kind of playing Hadwin. Everyone's kind of in on that. Everyone really likes Charlie Hoffman. Everyone likes Kuchar. Everyone likes Stenson. People have mixed feelings on Xander, Finau, and Cantlay, but it seems like at least everyone likes one of those three guys. So I think that you can kind of pick and choose. Like, no one's playing Patrick Reed. No one's playing Tyrrell Hatton. Webb Simpson, no one's playing Rafa. We mentioned no one's playing Schwartzel or Grace or Kisner or Woodland or Hautong. Like, these are the prime spots. I keep talking about that. If you can find the Thomas Peters from last year, that guy who was sub 5% owned, and that's all you need to differentiate your lineup. You can go with all the chalk you want after that. So if you have a strong lean on one of those guys, then that's the dead range to look at. Because otherwise, if you look at the top, I say that John Rahm and Ricky and Dustin and Thomas are going to be low owned, but they're not going to be like 1% low owned. Like if one of them creeps into the single digits, it's going to happen. We can't pinpoint which one it is. I happen to think it's going to be Dustin, but he's still going to be like 9% owned, not 2% owned.
Yeah, the soft pricing on DraftKings right now allows us to really play around at that 8K range, which is so you're getting elite players at that, which we usually don't. This like low 7, this mid 7 is really where in most tournaments we like to see guys pop, right? This is some of the value plays that we like to have exposure to. But in this case, yeah, it's that 7K range. I mean, you have guys like Fleetwood and some of these that that have the ability in terms of some price ranges to garner some ownership. But yeah, that low 7K and that mid 7, you're not really seeing a lot where you're taking stabs. And so I agree with you on that.
From Twitter, Tom asks, who has the least upside from these guys? Chappell, Steele, Bryson, Henley. I love them all, and I can't decide how to rank them upside-wise. I would say Bryson probably has the most upside, followed by Chappell, then Henley, then Steele. That'd be my ranking.
Yeah, Steele's interesting, right? Steele, he's coming into this really well in terms of ball striking, par 5 scoring, and so I do like Steele and as well as Chappell. I think Bryson, like I said, Bryson is going to be a guy who's heavily owned at that 6,900. But Bryson Steele off the tee, right? You see that he's top 5 and off the tee, and these are the stats that we like to see, right, coming into the Masters. And so I think I would be a little bit higher on Steele and then Bryson DeChambeau.
All right, continue putting your questions into the feed on YouTube, through Twitter, and on Periscope. We'll try to get to as many as possible, preferably all of them, but you know, if there's like 10,000 questions, it's going to be kind of tough. So next one, Richard asks, would you drop Fleetwood because he's playing with Woods? He's also leading the par 3 right now, too, so there's no possible way he can win. No, I like Fleetwood this week. I actually bet Fleetwood this morning. His odds dropped after he got paired with Tiger. He fell all the way down to 50-1. I missed the 80-1 boat back in last November and December, so now everyone's just jumping off ship. I'm going to jump on the Tommy Fleetwood train. I think he is the proper pivot in that $8,000 area from Sergio, from Bubba, from Casey, from Hideki Matsuyama. I really like the way that he sets up. Essentially, Tommy Fleetwood is Sergio. He's exactly the same when it comes tee to green, and they're both kind of crappy putters. I just think that if you can get him in a spot where the irons are still hot, and even when I ranked it out on my model on fantasynational.com, even past 8 rounds, past 24 rounds, Tommy keeps showing up in all the ball striking stats. It's just the putting that's letting him down. So I'm in on Tommy Fleetwood still. Would you be rattled by Tiger? I would. I just don't think heroin Tommy is.
Yeah, I mean, I think he said earlier, right, too, that he's relishing this opportunity to play with Tiger. Now, easier said than done, right? We've seen some top guys like Rory and Justin mention that, that the Tiger crowds now, especially at Augusta, his first time back, coming in such good form. It's going to be a tough test, but I wouldn't necessarily fade Tommy because he's, like you said, he's coming in this 8K range. We see a lot of guys, right, that are extreme ball strikers, like a Hideki, a Noren, Thomas Peters, or excuse me, not Thomas, Tommy Fleetwood, who are extreme ball strikers, but just haven't gotten the putting to come around now. So I wouldn't be off on Fleetwood too much because of Tiger. If I had to pivot, I want to go down to Noren. The only thing that scares me with Noren, and we've mentioned this before, is he cannot close. Jeff Feinberg he can't come home clean, and we've seen Noren be close, and so that does scare me a little bit. But Noren, I think, is going to be really, really under-owned, and I really like his price there, 8,100.
Yeah, Noren very incredibly anti-Andercursed as well. But in this range, there's just a straight-up question. Would you rather have Sergio or Hideki? This comes from Sean. I'd rather have Sergio. Who would you rather have?
I like Hideki. I think putting aside, if we take that out of it, because that's the most variant, I like Hideki here. He comes in, 2 top 10s and 11 in his last 3, and he's played here quite a bit. I think a lot of guys will be off of Hideki because of what we just talked about. There's a lot of guys around this area. And then people are also going to think, well, Hideki's wrist, is he still coming back? And we've seen him in that match play miss, 3-foot putts, time and time again. So I think a lot of players are going to be out on Hideki. But in terms of current form at Augusta, he's playing really, really well. The only thing he has to get right is his putting. Again, he's another guy that hits the ball a mile high. And so I like his approaches coming in high and being able to stop it in certain parts of the green. So I'd rather be on Hideki than Sergio.
T-Step from the Periscope. And like I mentioned, these Periscope questions just evaporate after 5 seconds. So if you actually just want to load them into my Twitter feed, I'll keep that open. I can answer your questions from there as well if you're watching on Periscope and want to follow along. He asked, would you go Louis or Scott? Scott's my one-and-done pick. I bet him to win. He's one of my core players. So I'll go Louis. Kidding. I'll go Adam Scott. You?
Yeah, I like Adam Scott. He's another guy, that people seem to forget about. I mean, his price is nice. He's won here before. He loves this course. So I also would rather go Scott than Louis here.
Next question. Oh, this one has to do with the weather. So from Free Time, how does the weather look this week, Pat? Any potential draws to lean on? And Kyle's question, Leishman, a good pick if he makes the cut, since there will be rain and high winds on Saturday. I mean, I'm not going with Leishman. He's just been playing so terribly. And outside of 1 year, has a really brutal Masters history. I get the logic behind it, but getting him through the cut first is kind of the difficult part. For the first round, it does seem there's not I'm not factoring the weather in terms of building my lineups at all this week. It looked relatively good, but it does seem like it's going to be a bit windier and colder in the morning Thursday. And outside of that, trying to project there's going to be high winds at 3:38 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. So I don't want the guys winning the tournament because they're going to be playing in tough conditions. With the weather, I think it matters more for constructing stacks because the first few days are going to be tough, or betting first-round leaders. I think for the new DraftKings single-day contest, the weather is going to become very important, but you're going to have to check that the night before. And I'll be recapping all the rounds, and we'll be talking about this sort of thing on the recap shows. Jeff Ulrich is going to be joining me for round 1 recap on Thursday night. It's going to be live on YouTube as well, so you can come in and tune into that. But no, and the other question was Rob's top 3 first-round leader bets. I don't do top 3 first-round leader bets. I made 6 first-round leader bets. So you can go to facebook.com/thepme and see which ones I bet. I love them all the same. If one of them wins, they're all my favorite, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Hoffman is always the FRL right at this point.
Yeah, they factor that into his odds, though.
Yeah, exactly. Austin Cook, who's at 6,700, is a long shot. I think he's coming in. He's a decent in terms of his odds, and I haven't checked what they are recently, but Austin Cook is a guy that I'm looking at for first round. He comes in nicely at birdie or better. He's hitting the ball. His ball striking is nice. He won the RSM Classic, which is in Georgia. It's 3 hours away from Augusta, and it's on the coast, so there's no correlation, and it's an easy course. So he does have a victory, but this is his first time, so I wouldn't put any stake in him winning. But Austin Cook is another guy that I might have some 1% ownership just in case he hits and he gets those birdies.
Yeah, I like Stanley down that range as the pivot off those chalkier guys. Kevin asked, what do you think about Patrick Cantlay? Excluding the fact that he takes a really long time to shoot. I don't mind Cantlay. I just worry that if he doesn't hit every green in regulation, that awful short game is going to catch up to him. And Colin Drew, Jeff Bergerson, and I talked about this on the ownership projection show yesterday. Out of him, Finau, and Xander in that range, I am overweight on Xander, I'm overweight on Finau, but I have more Xander than I have Finau, and I'm using no Patrick Cantlay. So that's where I come down on it. Listen, if you like Patrick Cantlay the best, use him. Who do you like the best of those 3, though?
I mean, I'm actually looking at a guy at a little bit less, at Brian Harmon. Cantlay, like you were saying,
Brian Harmon was 7 over par in the par 3 contest. Sorry.
Yeah,
can't play him.
A guy like Brian Harmon, right? We talk about this, and you mentioned it. There's correlation with lefties here who can really hit the ball, and get the ball going. He's not going to wow anyone with his distance, right? That's not what he's going to do. But where he's stellar is putting and around the greens. And this guy, and what I like is he shows up in these tougher tournaments, right? We saw him at the Open, WGC Mexico, where you have a pretty tough competition. He came in 5th. So I do like a guy like Harmon in that range. But a guy like Cantlay, all of his stats are there. But when he's in one of those, I think you were saying 41 bunkers that we have at Augusta, he's toast. So I'm going to be off on Cantlay and go to a guy like Harmon in that range.
The problem with Harmon is that so much of his productivity and high finishes are based off putting that if he has even just a slightly above average putting week, he's going to come like T43.
True, but I mean, you gotta make, like you said, we gotta make a stand somewhere, right? In this range.
Yeah, I don't mind Harmon. I actually have him as a tertiary guy, but I like him way less than those other guys. Like I like Hatton, I like Poulter a lot better. Like at least give me the tee to green game that Poulter can get hot with, rather than Harmon, who just seems to rely on his putting so much.
Yeah, a guy like Hatton, right? He's popping too. He got his debutant out of the way last year with the missed cut. So a guy like Hatton is another guy that we've seen pop. He did well in the WGC. In Mexico, he did really well, right? So he's another guy that plays up to his competition. He's hitting the ball fantastic. His putting is kind of eluding him now. But again, if we have to make some stances somewhere, I would pivot off of Cantlay and go to Harmon. But yeah, Hatton's he's a great play too as well.
Can first-timer Xander Schauffele finish top 5? That comes from Eric in the YouTube chat. I think so. I would say top 10 more, but I like him the best out of any first-timer. And you like Finau the best, right?
Correct, yeah.
Thoughts on Jon Rahm? Feel like he might be the guy who's overlooked. That comes from Marshall. We already talked about this, and yes, we both agree that he is the guy that's being overlooked. He and Ricky from that range. Joe asks, oh no, I just lost Joe's question. Sorry, Joe. I don't know where we went. I'm going to scroll back up because it was interesting because it wasn't about DraftKings, it was about pools. Oh my God, there's a lot of questions in here. All right, I'm in a pool of around 150 people that is based on final score. How chalky would you go, or am I okay taking 4 of the top 10 players, or would you take a shot? I don't know all the rules of this pool, but if you have the ability to take the top 10 players, I take 9 of the top 10 players and find one guy from the bottom you think is going to do well, and just go with pure chalk and roll with it.
Exactly. I mean, I think there was a stat out there, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that no player has had 4 straight rounds under 70 here at Augusta. So again, if you're doing based off of average and you're just pooling in all final rounds, all rounds and seeing the scoring average, that'll be a little tough in terms of the statistics that you want to use. I think it's a good ancillary stat. But yeah, if you have a chance to take 9 of the top 10 guys, do it.
This guy, Zachary, says he's not impressed by Jon Rahm's putting. Jon Rahm is the 11th most strokes gained putting of anyone in this field over the past year. So what you feel may not be reality. You might be Tim Andercutt out there. Pat, 4 golfers for one and done already burned. Ricky, Fowler, Louis, Rafa, Reed, Ute. Thoughts? That question doesn't even make sense. I would take Jordan Spieth if I haven't used him already. If not, I'm taking Adam Scott because that's who I took. Henley baby swag. He did just have the baby. Danny Willett style. Worth a shot. I just think that Henley is going to be chalky, and where I already have most of the chalky guys down in that range, I'm fading him. But if you want to fade like Hadwin and take Henley instead, I think that actually makes sense. Do you like Russell Henley?
I mean, not really. I think he's a guy that pops. I mean, he was a nice Houston play, and he did well, right? He popped at Houston, where there are some corollaries with Houston, not a ton, and so yeah, I may have some ownership on Henley, but I'm not a huge Henley owner. I'm going more towards Hadwin and beating that chalk there, just because I think he's coming in way better than Henley.
This guy, Eric, says, no one's talking about Matthew Fitzpatrick. Couple of things trending to that top 5 finish. Now, I'm wondering what these couple of things are. Is it the consecutive missed cuts? The overall poor performance this year? The fact that he hasn't gained strokes in a weighted event with his approach shot since, where is this? The Arnold Palmer Invitational last year? Yeah, he's great, though. Thanks. You playing Matthew Fitzpatrick?
There's there's a narrative that if it has any sort of Masters,
that is the trend. Yes, if it has Masters in the title, whether it be the Nordia Masters or the Omega Masters or the Swiss Alps Masters. Yes, Matthew Fitzpatrick does show up, and he did have a top 10 finish at these Masters before. But like, I just don't get it. Like, I get that you could back him because he's not going to be owned by anyone, but I just don't see what you're looking at to think that he's going to play excellent this week. And maybe he will, but I can't get behind it at all.
Yeah, me neither. Again, at that price range, we've already talked about a few guys that we like a little bit better. It's kind of the same thing too, right? There's correlations and there's trends, right? Even the Omega Dubai, right? Do we think Hao Tong now is going to win because Sergio won and Willett won previously? There are things that you can correlate, and especially million makers, you want to find these ancillary stats that maybe could give you a narrative to where if you're on a Hadwin or a Kisner or a Woodland, right, and a RCB, then yeah, there are some of these things, but no way. Like Fitzpatrick, I'm going to be totally off Fitzpatrick.
Same question for Billy Horschel. He's not terrible on bent grass and has beaten elite fields before. True, but he has just been god awful. Basically, since he won last year, he has been god awful. So I'll take a hard pass on Billy Horschel as well. Dan asks, I've heard you say you like to make your bets so whichever one of your guys wins is the same amount. It's kind of out the door this week because I bet some guys a while ago and then I reinvested again. But generally speaking, yes, that is true. What kind of return are you looking for on winners when building your card? That's personal to me, so I will keep that quiet, but it depends on you. If you want to have $50 back on everyone when you win, then just factor it out that way. If you want to have $1,000, then factor it out that way. It depends on the person, right, Reid?
Exactly, right. I mean, and we talk about this too. If you want to take a statistic of, do you think DJ or do you think Tiger's going to win, right? He's 8-1 or whatever is Rory at 8-1, at 10-1. Do you want to bet those guys as opposed to a 20 or 30 or a Stenson at 40, right? He may not be coming in terms of Augusta like we've seen with these other guys who are obviously at better odds, but it's really up to you in terms of how you want to diversify your card, right? If you want to go at a long shot and then hedge, right, that's another thing that you can do in terms of building your card where you get like a Bryson or, I mean, even Bryson, I think he's drifting down because of how well he's perceived to do here this year. So how you build your card is really up to you. It's objective. And really where you go from there in terms of your return, that's what you can afford. Don't say like, I want X return, therefore I'm going to put in if you can't afford it, obviously. But it's really up to you guys.
All right, so next question. John asks, any thoughts on a bogey-free round? No, not really. I don't. Rom, we already talked about Rom a lot. We like him. Right, do you think it's worth a flyer to put Kim in your DK lineup if you think he makes the cut? If you want to, I just bet him. That's why I don't play Siwoo on DraftKings. Hey, listen, if you put him in your lineup and he does make the cut, he could win. Or he's going to be like the last place guy who made the cut, because that's what Siwoo does. He's also a potential withdraw guy at any moment, so you always have to watch out for Siwoo as it pertains to DraftKings. But obviously he has great upside. And you look at where he's won, the Players and the Wyndham, spots where guys who've won the Masters have played really well too. So he's a very interesting play. I get it for the millionaire maker because no one's going to own him, but I love Siwoo. Like I said, I'll bet him at 300-1 rather than have him sink one of my 20 million maker lineups. You going to play NEC? Woo!
There it is. No, I'm not. There's that kind of correlates to the last question where, yeah, I mean, that value is there, right? So he's more of a bet for me as well. But a guy like Siwoo, where and when he wins, he plays lights out in all facets of his game, right? We saw him pop a little bit at the WGC, the match play. But for DraftKings, no, man, this guy, like you said, he's such a risk to have in your DraftKings lineup. You don't want any Siwoo and DK.
Hadwin top 40 bet on his book, -125. Yeah, I like that actually. I've never seen a top 40 before, but sure, let's do it. Kyle Stanley's stats aren't bad, but major history is bad. Thoughts on rostering? We've already called out that Kyle Stanley I do like as a pivot play from down in that range. You don't need a lot of Kyle Stanley to make it work, and he gets you off of the chalk and ownership of Bryson, of Perez, of Chappell, of Brendan Steele, and those guys from down there. I don't have the utmost faith because a lot of his ball striking is the fact that he hits so many fairways, and that's not the biggest deal in the world here, but I do like the fact that he's played this before, and we've seen him go out and compete in big fields. Is Steele worthy of a flyer? I mean, yes, you and like 17% of people playing the Millie Maker seem to agree on that, exactly. David. So Michael asks, hey, Pat, and choose one from any tier Masters pool. See, I don't mind. I don't want to sit here because I get a ton of questions about Masters pools and be like, oh, pick my team for me. I don't want to do that for you. This question, I don't mind so much. It's like when people say, oh, rate my DraftKings team. If I was going to rate your DraftKings team, I'm just going to tell you it's good because I don't care. I've told you who my picks are. If you've used those, obviously I like it. These are the ones I like. This guy or this guy? This guy or this guy? These are the questions that we should be sticking to here. Hey, Pat, choose one from tier lineup, Hao Tong or Patrick Cantlay. I'm scared of the bunkers. In this situation, although I'm not the biggest fan of Patrick Cantlay, he's clearly the choice here. What do you think?
I think my first just was do a little Hao Tong, just because of the silly or the stupid correlation with Dubai. But yeah, after 3 seconds of thinking Hao Tong is better, I'm choosing Cantlay as well.
Nick is in a one-and-done league where he uses 3 people for the majors. Would you save anyone for majors upcoming? I do like Rory to win the U.S. Open. I like Sergio and Norin to battle it out for the Open Championship. So I think if I was just going to burn guys, I'd just do Spieth. I would do Spieth, Dustin, and I want to say Justin Thomas, but I just think taking him at PGA. I think just taking him at PGA Championships is really the smart move. But Spieth for sure. It's a great time to burn Bubba, to be perfectly honest with you, just because, and Phil for that matter. Those 3 guys, because this is their best. I mean, Spieth can play well at any of them, but Bubba and Phil are really tailored for Augusta, and this is their best shot to win any of them. So those would be my 3 guys, I think.
Yeah, Day is another guy that I just can't figure out right now. Just because, again, I like where his game is at, especially his current form at Augusta. He's always played well here. He hits the ball high, so I like his game in that sense. But I really can't figure him out. You see his short game stats. Ball striking is not good, but it's not bad. So I'm still trying to figure out in terms of how much exposure I want with Day, because I think he's another one who might not garner as much ownership as we think just because of the other guys around that range. And so, I'm with you with DJ. I think he's a solid play here at Augusta. Jason Day would be another one. And even a guy like Fleetwood, who I think is actually more suited for the Open, but in terms of where he's at, I wouldn't mind burning a play on Fleetwood as well.
Firm believer in the Henley baby swag. This comes from Big Bad Wolf 83. Does it really matter much to you? No, it doesn't matter much to me, to be perfectly honest with you. Matt asks, why is DJ 17-1? Another sex scandal in the making? I don't know where the hell you're seeing 17-1 at, but sure, everywhere I look, max 11-1. No, Nicky asks, I know it's not your favorite, but, Canadian too, because he used the U in favorite. My fellow countrymen. Or he could be British, I suppose. But how many different cash game lineups should someone make? Just one, or is there a better number? I like making one if I'm playing cash games, or just playing a whole bunch of head-to-heads, but I know a lot of people that play 3, and that way you divvy up and you try to win 2 of the 3, and that way you don't have anyone overlap. So if one person that you really like burns you, then you have an out, and you can still own them in 66% of those lineups. So I think that 3, if you're playing a lot of tournaments and a lot of head-to-heads, makes the most sense because, and you can still win all 3, and you can lose all 3, let's be real here, but you're really shooting to win 2 of the 3, and that way you end up for the week. Do you have any distinct cash game ideas?
Yeah, no, I mean, what I do too is with cash games, I like to see where my balanced approach is when I'm starting to construct my rosters. I stay more in the GPP range, so I don't really have a lot of cash game lineups, but that's where I really start in terms of strategy on how I want to build a balanced lineup. It's more towards the other tournaments because obviously the soft pricing here allows us to make a really good balanced lineup. So in terms of strategies, I think yours is spot on. But what I do is I kind of look at that and say, okay, is this a good cash game balanced lineup? And then deviate from there for GPP. So that's how I'm playing my strategy with cash, not so much exposure in actually playing cash games.
Okay, yeah, I'm not a big cash game player either. I just prefer giant tournaments because I like to have fun. Jacob asked, Ryan Moore, a good play at 2 or 3% ownership? Was in contention? Yeah, Jacob, shh. He's in my column. I've just been trying not to talk him up too much because I kind of like Ryan Moore this week. Although, inside reports tell me he looks like garbage around the course. So take that for what it means during practice rounds this week. Also, apparently Dustin Johnson looks terrible all week, and he couldn't possibly play well. So remember that.
Is there a curse of winning the par 3 in any given year? Because he wanted it. Didn't he win it a few years back or a couple years back?
Who?
Ryan Moore.
Maybe. I think the correlation between winning the Masters and not winning the par 3 is only one person can win both of these things. And it's very hard to win both. So winning both would be exceptionally difficult. Jared asks, what's a one lock for every lineup? Doing 20 lineups in the Millie. Spieth? I don't want to go chalk with Rose or Casey. Well, Spieth is going to be just as chalky as Rose and Casey. I personally wouldn't go all in on any one player, but I guess he's my pick to win. So I would do it with Jordan Spieth if I was going to do it. If you had to play one player in every lineup, who would it be?
My guy is Justin Thomas. I think he's coming in to this tournament kind of like Spieth did in 2015. This guy is an elite ball striker. I can't look away at his current form and how he's coming into it. Now he only has his Masters performances, or his Master performances, not that good in terms of what we want to see from an elite player. But at the same time, a guy like Sergio, some of these guys who weren't in decent form coming into it, a guy like Justin Thomas is a guy that I'm going to have a lot of exposure to. A, because I think he sets up nicely for here. But B, I don't think he's going to be heavily owned.
Let's see here. Kyle Creeman asked about the Jason Day irons. We already talked about it. No, I'm not scared. Neither should you be. I'd be more worried that he gets in a fatal car accident the night before, and you take him out of lineups, and then all of a sudden it's not fatal, and he's just on the tee and he's fine and he wins and no one has him, because that's what Jason Day does. Zach asks, is Kuchar a free square at that price at $7,600, and he should be top 10 easy. Top 10 easy. I like how easy people think that golf is. Yeah, pencil him in for a top 10. Don't worry about it. Move on your way. Come on, man. He's going to be one of the chalkier plays down in that range. I'm not using him in the Millie. Are you?
No way. He's going to be so chalky in that range. I'm staying away from Kuchar.
Yeah. All right, cash games, sure. It's same as Stenson. I'm not using him in the Millie. If you want to use him in cash games, I get it. Same as Paul Casey. Same as, I am playing Sergio, and I am playing Rose in the Millie, but those two other guys, great cash game plays. Yeah. Cam Smith, worth a look. This comes from Jared. I think so. Not so much for me, because if I was playing 50 lineups instead of 20, I would include Cam Smith, but where I had to narrow everything down, he didn't quite make the cut. But I do like Cam Smith a little bit.
Yeah, his around the green game is fantastic. He's a guy that again, I can't figure out a guy like Cam Smith in terms of down in that price range. So I'm not going to be that in on him. So, yes, you can build a case around Cam Smith in terms of what you've seen recently, but for this tournament, I'm not going to be heavily, again, DeChambeau, Steele, Kevin Chappell, again, a little bit above that with Pat Perez. I'd rather go with those guys as opposed to Cam Smith.
David Russell asks, who won the last Millie ticket? I mean, if you just looked at Twitter or my Facebook page where I posted them, then you would know. Probably wasn't you then, I guess. Next one, Leishman or Noren? I prefer Noren. Who do you like?
Yeah, Noren. I think Leishman is a guy, like you said, his master performances aren't that good outside of that one that he did really well. So I'm in on Noren.
Is Finau's putting too bad to contend? I don't necessarily think so, to be perfectly honest with you. We've seen a lot of poor putters win at Augusta before. I think that where he's a first-time player and doesn't know these greens at all, I kind of joke with someone that actually might help him because he's going to misread the putt anyway, but it might put him on the right line because he's screwed it up to begin with. So I wouldn't just take people off the table, especially this week, because they're poor putters. How would you rank the $6,900 range? Bryson, Chappell, Steele, Keimer, Perez, Cam Smith. I feel like I've been doing this all week. People know that I'm in on Bryson, and I'm in on Chappell, and I'm in on Perez. The other two I'm not using. You?
Yeah, the only guy that I would add in that is Steele, but the first three I'm using more, right, and more of my lineups. But if I wanted to add anything to that, it'd be Steele.
Spencer, Pat Perez, or DeChambeau? Wow. I think objectively that Bryson is the better play, although for the Millie maker, Pat Perez and both have great acumen on par fives, and we've seen Pat Perez just compete against some of the world's best. It's kind of crazy when he just shows up. And he has future baby swag on the way if that's something you want to play into. But I think because of ownership purposes, Perez is probably a third of the ownership. So if you're not playing in many lineups and want to differentiate, I personally would go with DeChambeau. But I have a lot of both of them. And if you're playing ownership, it would be Pat Perez.
Yeah, and you want guys that can score, especially on par fives. Like we said, it's the par fours stay even par. Par fives you want to score. Obviously, par threes you want to stay even par. That's where you're really going to win and do well here, especially on DraftKings. It's that par. It's the birdies, right? The birdies are better, especially the better. And when we see guys get hot here at Augusta in the par fives, they're making eagles. And so a guy like Pat Perez is someone that I also have a lot of ownership in.
Danas Hadwin, 172nd on tour in par 5 birdie or better percentage. Can he overcome this obstacle at Augusta? A lot of that, just frankly, has to do with bad putting. He's been one of the worst putters going around. He's typically one of the best putters around, so he's not making those birdie putts. Therefore, he's not scoring on the par 5s. But tee to green, at least lately, Adam Hadwin has been excellent when it comes to all of this. So I'm just going to bring it up right now to see how he's been playing a little bit recently, to see if he is as bad as that, because I haven't really put it in. Let's see. Yeah, even in this field, over the past 100 rounds, very poor. Let's search by the past 24 rounds to see how he ends up doing. Adam Hadwin is significantly better. He is 41st in this field over the past 24 rounds on par 5s, and over the past 100, like I mentioned, in the 60s. So he's progressively getting better, and the putting is still not there. I just worry about the ball striking. The ball striking is there for Adam Hadwin, even in spite of being a shorter hitter. And if he does miss greens, he has an immaculate short game, and he can make it up. If you want to fade Hadwin because of that, listen, very logical. I just happen to think he's going to do very well here, and he impressed me last year, and he impresses me with his ability to play a long course like Riviera really well too. So I'm in on Hadwin. Are you wishy-washy on Hadwin, or is he going to be a core guy for you?
He's going to be a core guy for me because, like you said, I'm not. Yes, you worry a little bit about the distance, right? And we see that this steps off at 7,400, a little above that. But really, it's going to play longer than that because of the elevations. So a guy like Hadwin does, just scare me. And scare might not be the right word. It does. You can temper some expectations, but a guy like Hadwin is, like you said, amazing around the greens. So even if he does miss these greens, even if he goes into greenside bunkers, he's amazing around the greens. And putting, right, is something like we always talk about it. It's variant. So if he can find what he had last year, and who knows, maybe it takes a place like Augusta for him to do that. This guy is going to be one of the better plays down in this range because what do you want down here? We talk about all the time. Win equity. You want guys who can perform and can play in tough competition. Hadwin's that guy for me, so I'm going to be in on Hadwin.
Spencer brings up Bryson's performance in the par 3 contest, so please, moderator, block him from ever commenting in the chat again. Thank you. Would you look more at current form or more at course history for the Masters? I wouldn't look at just one. I would look at both of them and to see if guys that have played well here before are in decent current form. And I think that's sort of the Matthew Fitzpatrick, Daniel Berger deal, is that these guys have performed well at Augusta before, but their game is nowhere near where it was when they entered those other tournaments, so it's really hard to put too much stock in that. Maybe they pop. They pull a Lee Westwood from all those years where just plays like garbage, then he gets to Augusta, all of a sudden he's good again. The guy with the good course history it's not even great course history. He has won and had a top 5, including last year, that is just playing piss poor right now is Charles. Charles is the one guy no one's talking about, and he killed the par 5s here last year. He sucks off the tee coming in, but if there was one guy, just based on course history, that no one's playing that I would go in on, it would be him. Yeah,
absolutely. And if you look at the correlation, right, you have to take a weighted approach to past experience at the Masters, which is very important because of experience and where to hit it, but also current form. If you look at the guys since 2013 with Adam Scott, the tournament, 2 removed from the Masters, which was the WGC or around there, as well as Doral. These guys have played very well in terms of where they finished. I think outside of Sergio, most of these guys finish in the top 5 coming into Augusta. So again, there are some corollaries with current form as well as past experience at Augusta. Weigh those equally, or if you feel like course experience is more, a guy like Charlie Hoffman's another one, and some of these guys who play really well at this place. If that's your approach, then do it, because these guys, if they know where to hit it and they know where to miss too, more importantly, then these guys are going to play well.
I do want to let everyone know that there is a lineup lock show on DraftKings Facebook page at 8:30 p.m. Eastern tonight. So if we don't get to your question, just get them in there. Or you want someone's opinion who's not mine or not Reid's, then Reid, are you on the show? I don't know, actually.
I got stuff. I'm going to Bed Bath Beyond. I got a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah, so if you want an alternate opinion, just go ask the people on the Lineup Lock Show at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. DraftKings Live, DraftKings Facebook page. You can check all of that out. Next question. We got like 5 questions in a row about amateurs. You've officially started thinking about this too much. I'm sorry to tell you. No. Do I have any real insight on the amateurs who I've never seen play? Yeah, let me tell you all about them. They're great. They're probably all going to win. You just use all 6 of them in your lineup. Then you're probably going to win $1 million. Casey,
Low ownership.
yeah, Casey or Tommy Fleetwood in the Millionaire Maker. I am playing Tommy Fleetwood. Who are you playing?
I got Paul Casey. I think, again,
Wrong. Tommy Fleetwood.
I'm going to eat that ownership. I mean, this guy is playing so well, and he's won, right? He's won, and that's what we were kind of hoping for this year is that he gets that victory. I'm going to eat that ownership, right? Top 6 in the last 3, so I'm taking Casey.
All right, I'm going to go for another 15 minutes with Reid, so keep piling in the questions. I'm even going to tweet it out one more time. Still going for 15 more mins because I really have to pee, and we're on live, so I'm probably going to need to get out of here at some point. Have we talked about X yet? Yes, love X. With the Millie, how many lineups do you see getting 6 of 6 through the cut? Al Smiz actually tweeted this to me because I didn't, or DM'd it to me because I didn't know what the answer was. Let's see. 28% was 6 of 6 last year in the $33 entry. I would think because the field is smaller, it's shorter than that. So, yeah. I would say 40% probably. Just getting 6 of 6 through does not guarantee you any money this week, is essentially what I'm saying. Phil, Bubba, Harmon, lefty league. That's is it a pick between them? Like, can you make your questions?
No, I'm just kidding.
Can you just make your questions concise? Like that would really help because I'm trying to read it as I talk into the camera.
You can read between the lines and figure these
Listen,
out.
I'm like day 10 into this Masters stuff. I'm so punch drunk at this point. I'm just gonna let's try to rapid fire through these. 15 minutes left. Get your questions in. Patrick Reed or Thomas Peters? I would take Thomas Peters. You? I
like Patrick Reed. I mean, form and
now, when you say let's just cut it off there. That's who you like. We only got 15 minutes here, Reed. Dustin, oh, I already answered that one. Damn it. Pat, remember when we tried Hao Tong and he was plus 11 in 15 minutes? Will you play Hao Tong in a lineup, Reed?
Nope.
All right, neither will I. Fade Rose and Woods, question mark. I am fading Woods, not Rose. You?
I am fading Woods. Yeah, not Rose either. Rose is too good.
Okay. Now these people are just chatting, so thanks for nothing. Charlie Hoffman or Francesco Molinari? I would go Hoffman over Molinari, but none for me.
Yeah, no Francesco. Nope.
Gary Player could beat up Pat Mayo. Oh, tough words, Spencer. You loser. That's great. Starting my, oh my God. We already talked about Rose. Finau's ankle. Yeah, that's fine. Can Eric has more amateur plays? Jimmy Walker. You gonna use any Jimmy Walker? I bet him first round leader, not playing him in the Millie. You?
No. I mean, it would be a nice story, but I'm not gonna play any Jimmy Walker. That Lyme disease is tough.
It is tough. No talk about Kazire. Like him as a top debutant. Kazire's really interesting because I had not thought about him the entire week. I'm not using him, but his game does kind of set up well here. I wish he wasn't a debutant, but if you're looking for that guy who's going to be like 1% owned, that's the guy, isn't it?
Yeah, I wish he did like a little Bryson DeChambeau where he got in as the amateur, but he's coming in really good, but it's just that debutant, his first time, you have to weigh that in a little bit with Kazire.
If you have $7,500 on average for 3 guys, who are the guys that you were left playing? I mean, I have given all my picks all week, so you can just use the cheat sheet and find that out, and I'm not here to pick your team for you, so figure it out. Brendan Grace falls along the same lines of Pat and Kazire. This comes from free time. Would you rather play Grace, Charles, Kazire, all those types of guys? 'Cause I'm not using any Brendan Grace.
Yeah, I'm pivoting off of Grace and using Charles just because of that current form where he can't score on those par 5s. Grace is, I think, top 10 around the greens, but other than that, he's not really coming into this in current form. So I'd rather go Charles in that sense.
Thoughts on old guys playing like Couples and Langer? I have thoughts you should use none of them. How about you?
No way. I mean, Couples hasn't played around since Hawaii, so no way.
Millie Maker, Stenson, Ma, or Noren? I'll go Noren, not Ma.
Yeah, Noren. You know, like I like Stenson too. I'm gonna have a little exposure on Stenson.
Reed or Hatton? I'll go Hatton.
Yeah, I'll go Hatton in that sense.
Casey Hadwin, Sergio, or Stenson, Matsuyama, Noren? I mean, I don't love either one of those sides, but I like the Hadwin, Sergio side a bit better. That's a super chalky play, though. Casey Hadwin, Sergio.
Yeah, I'm going the Hideki group there just because of that ownership, and I want to stay from that chalk, so I'm going to end that row with the Hideki group.
Yeah, I was just joking about banning people from the thing, by the way, because I'm now getting to the part in the chat where it's going. It's jokes. Just calm down. Let's see. Thoughts on Webb Simpson? Haven't heard much about him. I'm trying not to use a ton of shorter hitters, and I am using Spieth and I am using Hadwin, so I can't take too many. I'm also using Poulter, so no Webb Simpson for me. Do have a first-round leader bet on him too, though, because I think he could pop for one of these days, but he's just been relying so much on his putting. He's like the inverse of Spieth, how Spieth used to be. It's weird.
Yeah, he went from worst to best, which is weird. So again, not going to be huge on Webb. There's other guys in that price range that I like, but yeah, first-round leader is nice.
If I'm playing $100 worth of lineups, would you do 5 milli makers or 25 $4 lineups or a split? I don't know if you can. I thought the $4 was a 20 max, so you can't play the 25. And maybe just play one. It depends on what you want. If you want to win $1 million, play them all on a milli. It's far more difficult to cash. It's very top heavy in payout structure. That's how you can get up to $1 million for first prize. If you're someone that's grinding and worried about your bankroll, then play the $4. But if this is like your one buy-in and you're the only time you're going to play $100 all year, screw it. Throw it in the milli, right?
Yeah, might as well, because what happens if you hit?
Yeah, you wouldn't want to win the $4 with a lineup that could have won the milli, right?
Exactly.
Feel like you need at least 3 players in your lineup from DJ to Hideki. Do you agree? Sure. Yeah. I'm for that. I don't think you need to, because if you play like DJ and Spieth and get real tricky with your lineup, then you can't do that, can you?
Yeah, no way. You don't need to. There's some guys that you could pair up, but yeah, there's no necessity up there that you need to do that.
Let's see. Xander, Perez, or Hadwin. $7,500 left for the Millionaire Maker. This comes from Tom. I would go Xander of that crew because of the pricing that you can fit.
Yeah, it was Xander, Perez, and who was the other one?
Xander, Perez, or Hadwin.
That's a tough one. I think that for me, Xander and Hadwin would be a toss-up, but I'd probably lean towards Xander.
Oh, apparently this Finau story is real, by the way. I'm just looking at it right now. Apparently he rolled or dislocated his ankle celebrating his hole-in-one. I thought that was just fake news from people in the chat, but apparently not.
Oh, yeah.
So, listen, I'm just seeing this now. Obviously, this happened while we're live on air. Listen, if he withdraws, don't play him. I need some time to process this. My early inclination would be if it's serious and he comes out and says it's serious, don't play him. Just put all those shares onto Xander.
Yeah, exactly.
Although, if you're in the best debutante market, there was a clear split at the top between Finau and Xander. If you think this is going to limit his play, go bet Xander right now before the books adjust.
Exactly. That'll be interesting to see how that plans out. But yeah, I mean, don't do too much thinking. You're not there. We haven't talked to Finau, so you don't know exactly what it is. So don't put too much thinking into it yet.
Anything else? Let's see. I like this one. Did you see Finau roll his ankle? It's like, no, I'm doing the show. What do you think I'm doing? I think we're almost out of questions. Let's see. All right, last one. No, second to last one, because I like this one. Ryan asked, which is higher, Mike Weir Uber surge pricing or front 9 scoring? It's going to be real tough. I don't know if they have Uber in Georgia, but I'm going to go with the surge pricing. What do you think?
Oh, man, that's a good one. I'm going to go first round just to be contrarian to you.
Yeah, very contrarian play. Any Chapel love, please. Johnny come lately. Pat Mayo, will you ever win a GPP or not? Nah is probably the right answer on that one. Chad asks, final question. How owned do you see Ian Poulter being? I say around like 6%, and I like Ian Poulter this week. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I got him around that 5%. I just like where his game's at, where he's putting. He's a momentum guy. He does it in bunches, and so I want to be too apt to playing some Poulter.
All right, that'll do it. Live chat, Pat Mayo Experience. You can go watch all the other shows, and I need to take a nap here at some point so I can wake up to actually watch the Masters in the morning, which I'm really excited for. I just want the tournament to start right now. Be aware of lineup lock, by the way, to make sure you get in, and I'll try to tweet out some after I watch the Finau stuff and get a few news over the course of the next 2 hours. Fortunately, the tournament doesn't start for like another 12 to 14 hours, so you don't need to make this decision right now. But Reid Fowler, tell everyone where they can find your work and follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, DK Live on all platforms. Twitter handle is Reid C. Fowler. We did some course previews. We talked to some guys who were actually at Augusta, so check that out just to get any sort of leans that you can. Some of these guys have been covering Masters for about 22 years. So these guys know what they're talking about. So there it is.
Thank you all, by the way, for tuning into all the content all week. If you check out my Facebook page, there's just a link pinned at the top where you can find everything on demand as quickly as possible. Oh, this loser troll guy, SSS, he likes to pop in because he has nothing to do with his life, so he trolls people on YouTube chats. Way to go, buddy. Oh, man, I wish I could be a giant loser who spend all my time at home on the internet, but hey, whatever it is, I'm still getting the hits out of it, so really that's all I'm concerned about. So give the episode a like, subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience wherever you can, download the podcast, give the episode a like on YouTube. My brain is scrambled from all of this, and like I said, just enjoy the Masters, and when it comes down to it, don't listen to anyone else besides you. You think someone's going to win? Play that guy, bet that guy, don't worry about chalk, play it all. All right? I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck with the Masters. I'll see you next time.